Mark was on another trip when he found out that his wife was giving birth. He raced to the hospital in his truck to be near her at this important moment. However, Mark was shocked when he arrived. The thing was that his wife Louise refused to take the newborn twin boys. She explained this move by the fact that she had already 2 kids, and it was very inconveniently. Louise signed the waiver papers and left the hospital. Mark couldn't believe it and headed straight home. However, he didn't find his wife there, as well as their elder kids, 3 years old Edgar and James. Louise handed them over to his old granny. In complete confusion, Mark didn't know what to do next. He didn't have any relatives besides the granny. He had to make something up. Children shouldn't suffer, much less to get into the orphanage. After calling his friend, Mark heeded his advice and decided to hire a babysitter for the kids. Without any delay, he began looking for the sitter. Among the neighbors, he found a girl named Catherine, who worked as a teacher in a private kindergarten. Mark only by a hard struggle persuaded her to work as a babysitter for him. To do that, she had to quit working in the kindergarten. At certain times, she would come and babysit his children. Mark worked as a truck driver, and he had frequently been away. That's why he offered Catherine to live in his house. It made looking after the children way easier, because they were always in the plain sight. Catherine agreed, understanding that Mark couldn't manage looking for his 4 children all by himself. He said it himself that he wasn't a good father. His wife was doing everything, and he was earning money. However, there came the moment when he had to take the matter in his hands. Thankfully, Catherine met him halfway. Truth be told, there were a couple of times when she even wanted to give up the role of babysitter. Catherine was worried that she couldn't cope with it, because she had 2 newborn boys on the hands, Paul and Ethan, and also 2 3-year-olds, Edgar and James. They needed a full-fledged treatment, care, and attention. Periodically, a visiting nurse came to the house. She helped Catherine prompted what to do, and in general tried to assist her as much as possible. Meanwhile, Mark kept working as a trucker. He didn't forget about the kids and Catherine though, and he always sought to bring the sweets and gifts after work. He wouldn't stay long at home between trips. Nevertheless, that was the time when Mark completely devoted himself to his family. Together with Catherine, they did shopping, took walks, and looked after the house. And so, eventually, Mark woke up beside the babysitter in the same bed. From that day on, great love had been flourishing between him and Catherine. Some may say that they had verified and examined their feelings. Soon, Mark and Catherine officially became husband and wife. When it comes to the ex-wife Louise, Mark managed to divorce her and submit the documents to the court for the deprivation of her parental rights. She herself desisted from it herself, so there wasn't a problem with obtaining the appropriate court decision. On the other hand, Catherine's relatives took her marriage with Mark ambiguously. It seemed to them that she took an exorbitant burden, because 4 stepchildren, moreover small ones, that was a great responsibility. However, Catherine didn't listen to them and stated that she would live with Mark and his children. The wedding was held modestly. There came only those who continued to appreciate and respect Mark and Catherine. Together they made plans about living a long life full of happiness. Nevertheless, after a few time, there came some tension into the family. Mark was less and less likely to stay at home, citing the fact that he had a lot of work to do. He also quit helping his wife and hoisted all the worries about the children to her fragile shoulders. Furthermore, he began to drink alcohol frequently and forget the clue of their marriage. In short, the first cracks appeared in their relationship, and through them flowed trust and respect. Catherine tried somehow to rectify the situation, but to all her pretensions, Mark replied equally, "If you don't like it this way, then pack your things and go. I don't force you." Nonetheless, Catherine didn't do it. She had used to the kids so much that so even a day apart seemed like a totally anguish for her. That's why she had to put up the fact that her husband died out and lost interest to the family. 2 more years passed. The 2 rough and tortuous years. Catherine had kind of used to all this, and she didn't think that there might be some more catch ahead. More accurately, not even a catch, but a betrayal. Mark returned after another trip earlier than always. After a solid meal during the dinner, he expressed a desire to talk. You see, dear, I don't want to pretend anymore. I have another woman, and I see her more often than you. We'll have a baby soon, and I'm going to marry her and divorce you. Catherine didn't believe her ears. Tears was flowing out of her eyes, covering her entire face. A thought, what about the kids, had immediately flashed through her mind. She was not thinking about what Mark would say, so she said, "Do whatever you want to, but I'm not going to give you children." For which the spouse replied, "No problem, take them. I will have my own soon anyway." "Your own? Whose these children are then?" Breaking into a scream, Catherine pointed her hand to the 4 boys. At this moment, Mark laughed out loud. "You're not going to let me take them. Anyway, I only need the divorce from you." "Okay, but only if you give me a consent to adoption of the boys, and never, ever going to tell them that I'm not their biological mother. In return, promise me that you will not say anything bad about me to your sons. Their own father must be respected." Catherine agreed, because she loved them sincerely. For the boys, she became the mother. Especially due to the fact that Mark left the house to her and her kids and went away. Catherine, on the other hand, told the children that their father had moved to another country for working, to build the tall buildings for poverty, and so he wouldn't come in a while. At the same time, she was worried about the possibility of her neighbors blabbing out the truth. Because of that, she had to sell the house and to move to a new place of residence. Then she quickly settled in, and a couple of days later she found work in a local hair salon. Even before wedding, Catherine had passed her stylist courses, and that came in handy. Soon, she developed regular customers who appreciated her professionalism and excellent quality of work. Catherine worked hard to provide for the children. At the same time, she didn't expect any help from Mark. There came the time to send the kids to school, and then, one day, when Edgar and James were putting their textbooks into the backpacks, they asked in unison, "Mommy, will Dad come from this faraway country to walk us to the school?" Catherine sat down into the armchair and sighing heavily replied, "No, my dears, Dad won't come. He still have a lot of houses to build." Catherine didn't want to tell them the truth. Mark never revealed themselves, and she didn't have any information about where and with whom he lived. She was good with her kids. They did homework together, read fairy tales, and enjoyed every day. Years passed. The sons had grown up. Edgar and James got married. Paul and Ethan were still studying at university. However, every weekend, they all got together, just to chat and discuss big news. On that fateful day, coincidentally, Paul and Ethan were having birthday. They decided to celebrate it with the whole family at the backyard. The wives of the older sons spun around the kitchen, helping with meat for barbecue, and the younger son's girlfriends set the table. Catherine was looking at them with thought only that she was the happiest mother in the world. Thoughts of happiness took her so far that she didn't even notice the man who came to the house. He looked bad. Old worn pants, leaky shoes, and a ragged jacket, and there were scratches and bruises on his face. However, he approached straight to the table and asked angrily, "Why aren't you greeting your daddy?" Catherine had almost fainted, hardly recognized Mark and that man. He went to hug Paul and Ethan, which caused anger and indignation in his address. The smell of alcohol came from him, but Mark neglected it and asked grouchily, "What does this mean?" He yelled, "Catherine, why are my kids running away from me? Didn't we negotiate that they would remember their father only from the best side? They ought to respect me." Catherine was bewildered, because it meant to her that she would have to tell children the truth and uncover the fact that their father had never been a hero, building the tall houses for the poverty in a faraway country, but just a drunkard who once left them. Mark looked pathetic, an old alcoholic and a filthy scoundrel. That was their dad they hadn't seen for so long. Edgar could not stand it first and said, "What should we love you for, Dad? While Mom was nurturing us, you were making up your personal life somewhere. We had found out about you left us so long ago. We just didn't tell her." Exposing his toothless mouth, Mark laughingly said, "She is not your mother. She is just a nanny I hired to babysit you. Your biological mother, Louise, ran away and didn't want to take care of you." Another terrible truth was revealed, which Catherine carefully kept in her heart. She had never thought that all it would come out, and on top of that, on a day like that, with tears in her eyes, she ran into the house. She entered the bedroom where her grandchildren slept peacefully, sat on the chair next to them, and covered her face with her hands. "That's the end of my happiness," she thought to herself, and began weeping bitterly. She was scared and insulted to show off herself to her sons. The door to the room quietly opened. Catherine lifted her face wet from tears and saw her sons, not young boys anymore, but the four strong, handsome men, stood with their arms around their shoulders and looked at her smiling. James held the book of fairy tales in his hands. He handed it to Catherine, and on the last page she noticed a note written in huge letters. "And they lived happily because their mom was the best mother in the world." Since that day, Catherine had never seen Mark again. He disappeared as suddenly as he appeared. Now she has no secrets from her children, and they love her just for being there by her side and taking care of them.